Welcome to the Real Talk Weekly podcast, where we discuss news, culture, life, and dive into deep conversations about our faith. Here's your host, Alan Reed.
All right, you guys know the drill. Our format is simple. Our team of experts bring the dishes, and then I'll bring the deep dish. So we want you to post your thoughts and tell us what you like. Give us your comments and your criticisms. We'll take those as well. And then on the count of three, you know what to do. 1, 2, 3. Smash that like button, please.
I wasn't sure which one he was going to say.
It's
subscribe,
funny.
share, comment.
Smash.
It's funny, you said, can I skip the intro?
Smash.
And I was like, sure, that's fine. You literally just skipped everything.
Skipped everything.
Just went straight to it.
And I was just repeating everything.
Yeah.
I'm Alan Reed, host of the show,
There it
here
is.
with the gang. We have a great lineup for you today. Dead, not dead. The world's oldest person?
Question mark?
Really? At 2, Chick-fil-A?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
You
really.
too?
Yeah.
And then teenagers
no.
are miserable. Why? So that is what we're going to be talking about today, but we're going to start off with our icebreaker. Oreo wants to make the grossest flavor ever. What is it?
The grossest flavor of Oreo.
Think of biting into a yummy cookie. An Oreo cookie is delicious, but it's not.
This is
It's
not
not
real.
that-
Also,
it's-
this
Yeah, I
is
was
just
going to say.
Yeah,
Don't go
this
searching
is
the internet
just
for
for
Oreos,
pretend
like
people.
terrible cookie flavor contest.
What if Oreo was, yes.
Yes,
yeah. I got one.
Okay.
It's nasty. Toe jam.
Toe jam.
Toe jam Oreo.
That probably would be bad. I can't.
That's gross.
It's nasty.
Is
Puke.
it? Yeah, it would be bad.
Puke flavored Oreo.
Puke.
I think my mind went straight to like Harry Potter, where they have the gross jelly beans.
Ew.
And so it's like,
Yeah.
but I didn't, I wanted to
That
be
was
like,
vomit.
yeah, I wanted to be like creative in mine.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be like realistic.
Yeah.
Yep.
And not like your stereotypical like
Yep.
body
too.
fluid grossness.
Yep.
Wow. At me next time.
So it's not poop.
I think like 13-day-old Brussels sprouts.
Oh, specifically 13 days.
13 days.
Actually, can make some
I
good
love
Brussels
Brussels
sprouts.
Yeah,
I do too.
but
They're
not
like little baby
13-day
cabbages.
old.
And not in a cookie.
Yeah, in a cookie.
Yeah.
A stinky cookie.
Mine
That'd
was
be very
asparagus. I would hate to have an asparagus.
But that's,
asparagus.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
The problem
you're
is
not
there are
gonna
people
go-
that like asparagus, so that's not really.
But you're not going to a cookie to get that
yes,
flavor.
Exactly.
But if I could,
If we're living in
If
the
I
future,
could, I wouldn't do
if I
it.
could have sweets,
It's kind of
and
like
fiber,
it would be like what Chick-fil-A's doing.
Yeah.
Is what it would be like.
how rude, Chick-fil-A.
At 2?
You really love that title.
he learned a new
Just learned
phrase.
two
I've
French
known that
words.
since high school.
So
Where does it come from, Alan?
one of the ladies
Whenever
at
that
work,
was with Brutus.
Yeah.
one of the ladies
my
at work, her
gosh.
son walked up and said, "Excusez-moi." And so I said, "Oh, parlez-vous français?" He goes, "What?" He's like, I said, "It means, do you speak French?" He goes, "No, I just know excusez-moi."
It's time for the dish.
You've heard of the Burger King, what do they call it? The Impossible Whopper thing.
Impossible.
But
It is
apparently
impossible.
all these fast food restaurants are going to this like plant-based
Yeah.
meat.
You can't really call it meat.
Yeah,
It's
that's why I
plant-based.
put quotations around it. But Chick-fil-A is not safe from this. So apparently they are testing out, and it is actually in restaurants around the United States.
Kinda
It's
wanna
not
try
near
it.
here, but
You say you would try it?
I kind of want to. Yeah.
I kind of do too.
so they have come up with a Chick-fil-A sandwich that is all cauliflower instead of chicken.
Nasty. Might as well be asparagus.
Yeah. Or 13-day-old Brussels sprouts.
Oh yeah.
But so this article from the USA Today, they tested it and they tried it out. But I guess they took like a press release or an interview from Chick-fil-A, and this is why they wanted to do this cauliflower sandwich. So they said, "We are committed to chicken, and chicken is the hero, but it is becoming more and more prevalent that customers really want to find ways to increase vegetables in their diet."
What?
So
Offer a side.
what better way to take vegetables and deep fry them
They
and
have
then
a
put them on a
salad.
sandwich?
Get the salad, folks.
You know, if they wanted to put vegetables back in people's diets, they would bring back the coleslaw. I'm still mad about that.
Yeah.
They gave you a kale salad that tastes like a burnt tire.
Yeah.
Ew.
To
It
Ellen's
is a
point,
nasty
though,
salad.
like
Yeah, they have a
you
salad.
can't deep fry a salad, though.
This lady's like eating it like, oh yeah, it's good, but look on her face doesn't say good.
So apparently, this this sandwich is made up of cauliflower, and they pressure cook it, so it still retains the cauliflower-ness, but it also is
The
crunchy.
shape of a chicken.
You know what? It looks like brains, I bet. You
Yeah.
bite into it, it looks
bite
like
into
deep
it.
fried brains.
Gross.
You know that
Do you know what deep fried brains look like?
No, but cauliflower looks
guessing.
like a brain.
You're just guessing. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
From the
So
profile.
I haven't had brain either.
they tasted
Ew.
this sandwich, and they were actually pleasantly surprised how good it tasted.
Wow.
Whatever. Is this a commercial?
Yes, brought to you by Chick-fil-A.
I will tell you,
It's actually
outside
an ad.
I will
Yeah.
tell you, outside of this article, there's been a lot of reels on this, and everyone's saying the same thing. All the reels are the same. They're like, "Oh, this is surprisingly good."
But
I could
here's the
see-
deal.
I could see that.
If you deep fry anything and put a
It's
bunch
good.
of flavors on it, it's going to
delicious.
taste
It's gonna
pretty
taste
good.
good, yeah.
Like
Wow.
if someone
I didn't think you could convince me, but I think you
If you
did.
Like, let's get
fry
real here.
a
Oh my
toe jam
goodness.
flavored Oreo, it's going to be delicious.
Okay, here you go.
Disgusting.
That's
Pickles.
true.
Pickles by themselves, they love them or hate them, right?
Delicious.
People are very divided on pickles. I
Right.
hate pickles,
But deep fry.
But you like
but
a
you deep
deep-fried
fry
pickle.
them and they
Right.
taste exponentially better.
True.
So
I
here's
like
the
deep
deal.
fried pickles.
What would you deep fry? Like, what could you not deep fry, like vegetable wise, that it would not be good?
Would you eat a deep fried Brussels sprout? I know you're
I think if it's not 13 days old, I would try
okay.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Asparagus, would you deep?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The answer is yes. It's
Yeah.
like, would you eat it with bacon? Yes. Deep fried?
absolutely.
Yes.
If you deep fry it, it's going to be good. But my favorite part of this whole article is the section that says, "Is it vegetarian?"
Why is it not? It's still a veggie.
It's not, because they use eggs.
It's also not gluten free.
It is not, because
No.
obviously if you deep fry anything,
And
it's
that
gonna-
is a good question because, like cauliflower, a lot of your pizzas for gluten free
Yes.
or cauliflower.
Yep.
Yeah. I think this is a cauliflower revolution.
So
This
realistically,
decade.
it's not really healthy
no.
No.
because it's still deep fried, it's still breaded, it's still all that stuff. It's just a deep fake.
It's just not meat.
We're making a cauliflower burger.
And it's like the the idea of getting more vegetables in your diet. That's the funny part about it. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, you could save like 10 calories and do the deep fried cauliflower sandwich, or you could get a real sandwich and get chicken.
With
Right.
exceptionally less protein.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's mostly water.
Yeah.
Yeah, folks, get a salad.
You know the
But also be careful
What's
on your
your
salads
veggies?
because,
Right. Don't eat the croutons.
my
Chick-fil-A
gosh.
marketing is the cow that says eat more chicken.
Yeah.
They're now going to add a chicken that says eat more cauliflower.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, like advertising wise, that's pretty genius. But also, here's the question. The starting price for this sandwich is $6.59
For a piece of cauliflower?
for a piece of cauliflower.
Oh,
Would
it's
you
like-
pay that?
It's like half a head of cauliflower, probably. I don't even know what a regular Chick-fil-A sandwich costs.
It's like right around there, maybe less.
Well,
probably- yeah, I'm guessing.
yeah, I get it. It's the same way I pay the same for a veggie burger.
Do you eat veggie burgers?
Of course she does.
I like veggie burgers.
Do you not know
I
her?
love
Why?
meat, but I also like a veggie burger.
I will tell you, there are some plant-based products that aren't bad. My wife works at a food testing lab, and I've been in a testing before, and I'm like, it's like they'll give you like a real piece of sausage and then like the plant-based sausage or a real
Mm-hmm.
chicken nugget and the plant-based chicken nugget, and you're like, I can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, you deep fry anything, it's gonna taste.
Well, like the sausage isn't deep fried.
Got me.
yeah,
but
but you're
there's
putting a bunch
something
of
I was going to
flavors.
be swayed over, but I may try it
So
now.
is Chick-fil-A going to change their name to like Cauli-Fil-A or Cauli-Fil-A?
Cauliflower.
Cauli-Fil-A. That's what it is.
Cauliflower.
And how are they going to change the commercials? Are they going to still use a cow?
No, that's what I said. It's going to be
It's
a chicken
gonna be a
that says eat
chicken.
more cauliflower.
Yeah.
Except it's going to be like
Okay, that's true. I wouldn't listen to you.
K-A-L-I. Of course you're not. You never listen.
But that's good.
I think it's probably good. If we're gonna try it, I say you dip it in buffalo and ranch, because then you've got like,
Oh, the Chick-fil-A sauce all the way.
oh no, not with cauliflower. I gotta go buffalo ranch.
So if you're interested in trying this sandwich, you have to drive to Denver,
Or North Carolina.
Charleston, South Carolina, and Greensboro.
Wow, basing my summer vacations off of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, road trip.
Yeah. So there you
We
go.
talked about going to see a movie, for one of our upcoming shows. Why don't we go to Denver so we can try the cauliflower sandwich and then see the movie there?
Well, I'm sure
it.
because of the popularity on social media, it's going to be
Sold
really
out.
hard to get.
Like when Taco Bell brought back the Mexican pizza.
Yes.
or Popeyes in the chicken sandwich.
Yep.
Either way,
Hey.
I'm not gonna try it.
Good job on the article there.
Good
You
job,
swayed me.
David.
I may try it now.
He's gonna try.
I was
it.
mad at him. Going woke on us, you know.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A.
Getting all vegetarian
I
on
don't
us.
know that there's anything woke about making
Oh, it is.
a vegetarian burger.
There's a
Conspiracy.
They gave
conspiracy.
in
Yeah,
to the
they're trying
cauliflower.
It's another way of destroying our country. All right, who's next? The dead, not dead.
Oh my goodness. Can you imagine? And first of all, to anyone who has recently lost a loved one, I'm very sorry. This is the thing that you see in like comedy movies, right? Or horror movies.
I wasn't say horror more than comedy.
Where, I mean, it depends on the kind of comedy you watch. I'm going to read the title. Funeral home finds woman breathing hours after she was declared dead.
That is like
Nope.
worst.
That's what you get
You
for
hear
working
this
in
like
a
a-
funeral home.
Once or twice a year, it seems like there's somebody that.
Yeah, and that's the thing about
How
it.
does
So,
this
I mean, just in this article, this was in Miller Place, New York. An 82-year-old woman was pronounced dead at a New York nursing home, but found to be breathing 3 hours later at the funeral home where she had been taken.
This is like the episode of Friends where
So, I mean, she was alive for hours and they'd never even realized it. And I'm like, okay. So, what's crazy, and the article doesn't say much because they're trying to keep her privacy, but this came out on February 6th. Mm-hmm. There has been no update to this woman's information on the internet, like what happened to her. And what's really startling about this is that apparently this is way more common than we think.
Yeah, see?
I believe it.
And so January 3rd, a 66-year-old woman was declared dead at a special care center where she was receiving hospice care. She was placed in a body bag and taken to a funeral home and crematory where workers found that she was still breathing inside the body bag and called 911.
Wow.
And I mean, she did die 2 days later. But, the fact is they declared her dead, put her in a bag, zipped her up, and sent her off, and she wasn't dead.
Maybe we should just give it a little more time.
Have you seen?
You know,
Have you
6
seen-
hours seems
Yeah.
like a safe bet.
there should be like just like a
A resting
and start
period.
time.
Right.
For the soul to
I mean,
make it out.
get the
and
mirror and put it under their nose and see, like, do
packing
something.
up my
Like,
items.
sometimes their heartbeat's weak. They're old. But I'm like instantly.
66 isn't old.
That's true.
And we're just hearing about the
Alan's
ones
really
that,
close to that
they
now.
found. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
You know, there's people who are
Oh.
like, I cannot report this. I'm
Nobody heard that.
so embarrassed.
Oh, my goodness.
But here's the.
Sorry, I missed it.
Well, she said 66 is not old. I said, yeah, I know. Alan's really close to that right now.
Oh.
You're close to my age.
I'm not close to your age.
You're
I'm
really
closer
close.
to your age than they are.
Yeah.
But so the humor in this to me, because I find humor in just about everything, was instantly I thought of Monty Python. Bring out your dead. I'm not dead yet. Could you imagine? Could you imagine?
If
Being-
we were rolling around a cart of people asking,
Well,
like,
that
if
number
you're
one.
bringing
But
out
number
your dad.
two,
Can't imagine.
like being the person that discovered the person that was
Nope.
declared dead and they're actually
I don't
alive.
think I would be able to sleep ever again.
Like in
Well,
those
they
movies,
already work at like a morgue. They sleep just fine around dead bodies all
but
the
in
time.
those movies where the people are like scared because they're like, did that body move? It
Yes,
did.
it did.
yeah,
It actually did. Because they weren't
We
gone.
should have
That's
had
terrifying.
a guest. We should have had a guest on the show.
I know exactly who to invite.
So interesting.
Mr. Funeral Home Man.
Yes.
To see if he's ever experienced that. I'm going to text him and ask him.
Or
There
the
you go.
kids from My Girl. That was my first option, actually.
All right. And so we're going to go from dead to the.
To living.
Well, she's
Almost,
probably
maybe.
dead now, but
She's
she
dead
was.
now.
Yeah. But the oldest woman in the world.
Yeah. So
Possibly.
this is a really fascinating story. This article came out by a longevity expert, which, what a fun title. I am a professional at figuring out how to have a long life. So this article came out this week, but there is a backside to this. And so we will link that because I could be here for hours just sorting through this. It's a conspiracy theory that it wasn't actually her that lived, but a relative. So anyways, we're just going to pretend that it was her. Her name is Jeanne Calment, and she's a French woman, and she lived to 122. She died in the late 90s. But like I said, this article just came out. This lady has been studying her life and decided that there are 3 reasons this lady was the oldest living person. And so I want to share these reasons with you so that you too can live to be 122.
Do you want to?
Okay,
I don't know.
Just go.
It's funny. Okay, number 1, you have to be wealthy. All right?
well, dang it.
So if you're broke now, get it together. She benefited from growing up in a bourgeois family in the south of France.
A bougie.
Bougie. Yeah, that's the American translation. Bougie family. she was able to go to school, which was not common for women during that time. And then
Really?
she received private, well, yeah, it was like the very early 1900s.
Yeah.
She received private classes in cuisine, art, and dance and married at 20. Okay. So she also never worked. So, all right. So if you're working and you're broke, you need, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Drastically.
You got to make
limited.
some changes quickly if you want to live to 122. And then she was never alone. She always had someone there to help her, so she didn't stress. Okay, so you got to remove the stress and get rich. Number 2, super important. Don't start smoking until later in life. So if you're currently smoking, give it up.
Yep.
Pick it up again
Wait till
later
you're about
on.
80.
Yeah. So she
Start smoking later.
she smoked when she first got married at 20, didn't enjoy it, put the cigarettes down
Wise woman.
until she was 112 in a nursing home, picked the habit up again.
Nice.
And she lived another
Why
10,
not?
she lived another 10 years after that.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
It is. Okay, final thing, this is how you live a very long life. You have a great social life. So when you don't work and you have all that free time, you have nothing to do except to be social. So travel around the south of France, wherever it takes you. Have a lot of social activities, and so go to balls, go to galas, go to different events. I don't know, go to Paris, and you will live a long life. So
You know what you don't see a lot of when you go to nursing homes?
old people,
lot of-
122-year-olds.
A lot of overweight old people.
Yeah.
Someone
She
said
was
that to me the other
healthy.
day, and I was like, that's so true. They're already dead. So I don't know if that is that in there?
No, this is just
Yeah.
it's
is a very
smoke
morbid
later in
episode.
life.
As a 50-year-old who's a little bit
Socialize.
overweight, you kind of think about those things. You're just like, wow, someone. I think maybe Pastor West said that in his sermon or something like that. Have you noticed there's not? Yeah, someone said. I can't remember. I'll give it to
It's a
Pastor
very
West.
morbid.
This is
episode.
well, this is encouraging. If
Yeah, it
you want
is
to live a
because
long
you can't
time,
smoke at 112.
Yeah,
I
get
think she was
rich.
just ready to go to heaven. Come on.
But then
Right. Yeah.
another decade went by and she's still just
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know. Anyways,
So
that's how you
sweet.
make it a long time in this world, and so
Okay,
best
but
wishes.
tell us this conspiracy though.
Okay, I won't get into too much of it, but there are a couple of experts who have been studying her. She had a lot of stories that didn't add up. And I'm like, at 122,
I know.
can we really say that she
So
was there
true.
mentally?
Right.
So, anyways, she had a daughter, and people think that it was her daughter who actually lived up until 97. And Jean, she died in 1934, but they didn't say it was her due to having to pay taxes.
Oh my gosh.
And so, anyways, the conspiracy theory is incredible. It's a super long research piece by the New Yorker. And so it's fascinating if you want to get your blood boiling
kidding.
and just be scratching your head for an hour, read that.
No kidding.
By the way, just to kind of back up a little bit, I asked our relative mortician.
Our local mortician.
Our local mortician. I said, explain the article and said, have you ever experienced that? No, but he did see the story. And he said, if that ever happens to him, that's the day he retires.
Yeah.
No
See, I
kidding.
told you. Even if they were around, deceased people all the time, doesn't mean they.
I mean, that's going to freak anybody out.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm done.
The morgue itself freaks me out.
Well, it should. That's a little weird.
No kidding.
That's a healthy fear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I tell you what,
You
old
affirm
ladies
me.
are just sweet. I go
They're
see my
so
mom.
cute.
She's in a nursing home and she's got a roommate there.
Hope she's not
And
listening to this. It's like the old ladies.
We'll
They're
just
cute.
sit and chat together. It's just the cutest things.
It is.
And
Well, I was thinking about, you said that, one of the secrets is a healthy social life.
Mm-hmm.
My grandma was in a care facility, before the end of her life, and she actually lasted quite a bit longer than we expected.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really cute to see that she would wheel herself around in the wheelchair and
Yep.
just, like where she was at, they had different little areas that they lived in. And so, there's a group here and a group here and a group there. Well, so she'd wheel herself out and she'd go to the communal areas and
Mm-hmm.
she'd go down the hallway and go to another section of the building. And, she was very social.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She
That
was
part-
also a little bit crazy because she
is
did
real.
slap someone for stealing jam off of the table because the woman took it back to her room to have with a piece of toast.
Well, somebody's got to lay down the law.
Yeah. Enforce it.
man, food fight in a
The
nursing
Fight in a
home.
nursing home.
She was running a small mob there.
I wouldn't-
No gym for
I wouldn't
you,
put it past my
Jan.
granny.
That's awesome.
It's the deep dish.
All right, for the deep dish, we have a New York Times article. Really, really good. Who is the author? The guy's name is Ross Douthat.
Do that. Do
Almost. Douthat. Great article. I thought he did. I thought it was really well written.
Job,
and a
Ross.
lot of stuff I liked in there.
And this was
with.
an opinion article.
Yeah.
Yes,
by the way.
opinion
Important.
article in the New York Times. American teens are really miserable. Why? And so we as a team have read the article together, and or not together, but we've all read it, come prepared for it, and I was just blown away. We're hearing a lot more of this kind of stuff, different articles. So this one was just another article that we've seen, but it just really highlights the fact that so many teenagers are struggling today, and it highlighted the fact that it's not. It's not even across the board, that we really see a heightened rate of depression, suicidal thoughts among our young ladies as well. So before we begin, what did you guys think of the article? Was it good? Was it interesting to you? What were your thoughts on teenage girls experiencing a higher percentage of suicide, at least the thoughts and depression?
I think it's really interesting. I mean, the piece is an opinion piece, so it's heavily swayed, I feel like. But then, we have research too, just kind of backing up some of these points. The conversation of mental health is really big right now, and I have strong feelings about that as well. And, I'm 10 years removed from being a teenager, but I don't feel like...
You wish.
I don't know. There's just a lot of things in this article that made me go,
I want to hear it.
Oh, I don't really think that that's true.
Yeah.
So
yeah. We'll bring those out for sure. So question, we'll start with you, Allie, on this one.
Oh, okay.
So do you agree or disagree with the fact that teenage girls are experiencing a greater amount of anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts
Compared to
boys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do
agree?
feel like girls experience that more. Most of the people in high school that I knew who acted upon those suicidal thoughts were all guys.
Right.
But I would say more girls experience that. And I think it's some of our makeup, right? Not actual like physical makeup on our face, but genetically, like we are more inclined to sensitive feelings. And we, as women, kind of have a stronger connection to social life. And so when your social life causes bad feelings for you, I think that's when suicidal thoughts and everything come in. So I do think it affects women more than it does men or girls in this case versus boys.
I have the same thought, like in a sense, because as I was thinking about the topic, I was kind of going back to my high school days, and we didn't have a lot of suicide back then, but we did have some, and it was all guys. Like there was never a case where a girl had taken her life. And so the whole premise of it kind of made me start thinking about the fact that, you're right, girls are much more in tune with their emotions. They're much more willing to accept it. So therefore they're probably impacted more by the thoughts. But to me, I was like, okay, is the reason why the guys are the ones that act on it more is because they're incapable, not trained, they're not helped in the area of dealing with their emotions and handling them. And it's, a faux pas for them to accept their emotions and deal with them. And so the guys just don't know how to deal with that. And so that's why they're more prone to actually take their life when they're dealing with that struggle.
I've heard that actually the attempt of suicide, girls are higher, but guys are more successful at doing it. And so kind of a sad thought, but it does show that anxiety is, higher in young ladies. But yeah, guys are more aggressive, and they're evidently more likely to follow through on that. So the two main thoughts, the guy who wrote this article, he brought up Jonathan, I don't know how you pronounce the last name, is I don't know if it's Haidt, if the D's silent, how you pronounce that, Haidt. His thought is that the key instigator is the rise of social media. But then there's another guy that he highlights, Derek Thompson, and he says that for him, it tends to be more ideological. A liberal might point to teenage anxiety among climate change or school shootings or the rise of Donald Trump, where a conservative might insist that it may be due more to identity politics or the isolation created by COVID, things like that. And so those were the two main thoughts. So when you guys read that, did you lean more towards one or the other or neither?
Well, all of us aren't teenagers, so it's hard to
literally none of us.
None of us are, but you guys are close.
to get to the mind of
you guys
a
are still
teenager.
kids. Yeah.
Because in this culture,
Okay, Dad.
In the same height.
especially in this like Gen Z growing up, it's hard to kind of get in the mentality of what they're doing. Like y'all can't think like millennials, and then so. But I tend to lean more towards that social media side of things. I mean, obviously those other things play into it, but I think a majority can find that social media is probably a big instigator in a lot of this.
It made me giggle. I literally put LOL right here next to that whole section you just read. I have 3 teenage nephews and I have 1 teenage niece. And so we're very close. We have a lot of conversations, and I can guarantee you right now that thinking both liberal and conservative side of that list that was just written out, they're not, I mean, there are like a handful of kids who think they know what they're talking about when it comes to politics, or like, oh, well, voting or whatever. And it's like, why are you worked up about that? You are 14 years old. You have no idea. You're just repeating what you've heard at home. And so that list from both sides made me giggle. And I just think a lot of like the world has just advanced so much, and we forget that at the end of the day, they're still teenagers. All those things that we felt as teenagers still exist. It's just progressed much more. And so I'm not so much in the camp that social media has, like, the reason for these dark times since the 2010 era has just stayed is because of social media. I think I think that generationally, like, this mental health situation flows. And so starting 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and now we're here and we have social media, I think all of that works together to create this anxiety for teenagers. And so I just think it's part of, unfortunately, being a teenager. It's this point in your life when you question so many things, and for them, scientifically, their brains won't develop until they're 25. And so it's so hard.
Why such a higher rate of anxiety, a higher rate? I mean, from what it sounds like, it's measurable that it's higher today than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's where I would agree with the article that social media has heightened it, because it's an immediate conversation. You're posting, whatever teenagers are talking about, today, they're posting about it, talking about it, they're comparing, like we all do and stuff like that. I can see how social media can really, do a number on young people who really are still asking the question, who am I, and now that you conflate it with all the different questions going on with gender identity and sexual identity, and everything is so gray in their world with no clear answers. And so I think it's just, in social media, just kind of, it's just, I don't know what you'd say. It's not the fuel, but it's the platform to where it just seems like it spreads.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. So for you guys, because you guys are younger, when you were in high school, social media was a thing, right?
Very beginning of it, yeah.
Yeah, so the very beginning of it. And I'm trying to gain the context just from where you guys are at, because I grew up without social media. I grew up without the internet, right? I mean, the internet existed, but it was nothing like it is today. It was mostly text-based, and it was reading. It wasn't, oh, look at these fun pictures. But I think I tend to agree a little bit with the article, disagree a little bit with the article. I think that, and I said this in a text thread, the reality of the social-based influence has always been around. It's been around since the advent of television, magazines, newspapers, maybe not newspapers, but magazines and all this kind of stuff. I mean, once you had Sports Illustrated and Vogue and all these magazines that were like, are you beautiful? Are you athletic? And you started comparing yourself to whatever these fake things were that had been put out and processed and photoshopped. You know, it's like, okay, well, yeah, that created some anxiety in it, you know, because that was definitely a thing. I mean, you go back way back when, before all that existed, and, you know, the statistics are probably lower. I haven't researched this. I don't know. But just based on what I'm seeing in the culture and the community, I'm going to say that this is what's happened. Now you're at a place kind of like Alan's saying, where everything is real time, on demand. You can see it, you can feel it, you can experience it. And social media especially is a highlight reel. You know, yes, you have people that are like, oh, my day was terrible today and I'm ready to just give in and give up. That's not the norm. That's not the majority. And that's not what gets clicks and ratings, right? The stuff that's better is the funny stuff. Oh, look how funny they are. It's the stuff where it's like, oh, look how beautiful they are. Oh, look how successful they are. Look how, I mean, it's all the highlight reel of, okay, this is the best of the best and these people are getting all the attention. And when you start just constantly ingesting that and you start going, that's not me. I'm not like that. I'm not at all like that. Oh my gosh, I'm a failure. And that's going to start building anxiety and all that kind of stuff. You know, now that being said, on the flip side, I do think there's a lot of stuff happening. It's kind of like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? There's a lot of stuff happening where what is public, it's whether it's in the news cycles, whether it's in social media cycles, whether it's television, whatever, is all this stuff that's politically charged about racism and, you know, gender identity and sexual identity. And, you know, do you believe in climate change? Do you not believe in climate change? All this negativity that's out there. And just the fighting about it just creates all this confusion and all this stuff that whenever you're young, like you said, their brains aren't developed until they're 25, you know, so they're having all this poured in. How is that not affecting them? You know, because we didn't have that. And so does that mean that we're more emotionally stable or better off? No, we still had experiences that impacted us and influenced us, but not to the degree. You know, we had like the garden hose. Nowadays, kids have like the fire hydrant. And so it's kind of like, I feel sorry for them because I'm like, man, you are being bombarded with so much stuff that's not real and it's not true. But you have super famous people out there saying, well, this is my truth. This is your truth. There's no such thing as my truth or your truth. There's the truth. And there's your perspective, there's your opinion, there's your point of view, but that doesn't always mean it's truth. You know, one of my favorite memes out there that exists is two people looking at a number that's been written on the ground, and it's a 6 or a 9, depending on which angle you're standing at. And it's like, well, this person says it's a 6. Well, this person says it's a 9. And it's like, they're both true. Well, because it depends on their perspective. Well, I love a comment that was made on it. It says, no, they're not. Someone wrote that as a 6 or a 9. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at it from a different angle or not. The creator had an intention. So the creator has an intention. It's just we're trying to take it from our perspective and our point of view, which doesn't really understand it, and trying to make something different out of it. So it's like somebody made that number on the ground to be the 6 or 9. And it doesn't matter if you're looking at it as a 9 if they meant it to be a 6.
Yeah.
And I think not rebuttal, but just saying that social influence has been around for a long, long time. I would say, yes, I tend to agree with that. But I think what makes this one special is because relationships are built on this platform, not just influence. And so I'm thinking back to the beginning of like when I started having social media, when I lied about my birthday to get on Facebook.
You would never do that.
Or get on MySpace. The first things that I remember of like, okay, MySpace, you had your top friends. And so you would kind of rank your friends, and then one day a friend would be lower than the other one, or they would move around, or your crush would be number 1 kind of thing. And then that would influence your relationships outside of the internet. And
That's
then now
so interesting.
And now you're seeing this, your relationship is purely the internet. Not just a one-to-one.
And that was a big difference. I mean, you kind of went into it to where you already had a lot of that established. Social media came about, and it became a new platform for it to happen.
Yeah.
But in this weird way, like I was not allowed to. I made a Facebook account without telling my parents and got in trouble. But in this weird way, I think that the time that we were growing up with social media was probably more mentally like draining, and more damage could have been done and probably was done during that time. Because like you said, you're literally ranking your friends publicly.
Yeah.
And now, like, those
That's
things
so
don't
interesting.
exist.
Yeah.
It's you just have your internet friends.
It was a wild, wild
You
west.
poor things.
Well, I mean, and I don't feel bad for us, but
Yeah.
our generation now,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people our age who are this influencer type, right, on social media. And so they live their lives very publicly on social media, but they disregard all of the negative comments. And so they live their lives so publicly, though. How are they able to deal with it? And teenagers are not able to deal with it. And there's some kind of disconnect between two generations in my mind. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it is just psychological maturity. Like, they're just teenagers. They're not scientifically, they're not there yet to be able to handle those things. But again, like I said before, I just think that we didn't take care of a lot of things in past generations. So the sexual revolution of the 60s that carried on through the 70s, and you've got pop culture coming in the 80s and the 90s. I think this article refers to them as the halcyon years. They weren't. They were very rebellious, and you have the opioid crisis. And so now you've got social media, and we've literally given a platform, like you said, Alan, for people to take all of that and make it as painful as it could be, and kids do. And I even think, like, when we were kids, that phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, that does not apply anymore. Like, words are the things that hurt people nowadays. You can hear it in the language they use. You know, you offended me or whatever, and that phrase is tossed around so much. And so I just think, I don't know. Kids don't fight on the playground anymore. I almost wish they did. I'm like, hey, if he said something about you, go beat him
and
up.
when those things
Just handle
happened,
it that way.
it was over on social media.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff stays on there. You know.
Well, and see, we've shot way past "you offended me" too. That's offensive. I actually just saw a video recently, and it was from a comedian, but he's very outspoken against this woke movement that's going on. He's like, how arrogant are you to think that you should never have to hear anything that you find offensive, because you say things that are offensive to other people. But how arrogant is it of you to say, well, that's offensive? No, you should say that I'm offended by that, because just because you're offended by something doesn't mean everyone else is. But you mentioned influencers, and I don't know if this is what you meant by what you said, but you made the comment that influencers living their lives publicly and they're able to deal with it. I don't know that they really are living their lives that publicly. I think influencers, they're showing, again, the highlight reel, the good things. There was a documentary that came out, I think it was on Netflix, about influencers, and it was showing, I just remember this one part of it. I don't remember the whole video, but I just remember this one part of it, and it was talking about influencers on a boat, right? They were out on some super luxury yacht or something, and it wasn't really a yacht. It was more like, they called it a yacht, but it was more like an overgrown fishing boat. But they're out there, and it's these beautiful women, and they're out there in their bathing suits, and they're hair is flowing back, and they've got the cameras going and all that kind of stuff. And they showed the stuff that was posted to social media. But then in this video, they showed the stuff that was behind the scenes. And the behind the scenes it was like 40 degrees outside, and they were freezing to death, and the boat sank, right? None of that ever made it to social media. The only thing that was visible was these pictures that looked like these women were enjoying their luxury lifestyle on this wonderful, incredible yacht in the sunny, warm weather, and the reality was nothing at all like what was posted. Yeah. And so it's like, that's I think the problem is that we have this facade that goes out over social media, especially from the influencers, right? Oh, look how perfect my life is. Your life's not perfect. Your life is miserable. You're just not being honest about it. And so that's kind of what I'm wondering is, like, there's that disconnect between what's actually really happening and
I don't know. I mean, I think whether you live a very authentic life on social media or a fake life, people are going to cyberbully you either way. And so I'd rather live a fake life and be bullied over something I know is not real.
And like you said, going into the age, we're talking about teenagers here, you experience something like that, and it can be devastating. It's different when you're when you're walking down the hallway. Like, bullying when I was a kid was when you were like in 7th grade and you were going to middle school, and the 9th graders would do this thing where they would push their friends into a 7th grader and like smash them up against the wall, And so you just realize that you got bullied a little bit, but then you went on to class and you're thinking jerks, But now it's just like, it is just it can be very degrading
and constant.
And it's different. It's changed.
And now it's even worse.
Yeah.
With that AI thing where I don't know the name of the young lady that just got posted, like where it made her like in some kind of like vulgar pornographic scene or something like that, to where they put her face on that. I'm just like, oh my goodness. Now she wasn't a teenager, but still a young adult, and just like, oh, just awful. You know, one thing I was thinking of when you guys were talking about is when I was a kid, instead of it being like where you had this, it was really the church and religion that kind of laid the rules, and everyone was like pushing against religion. And, you know, you think of like Dirty Dancing and some of those movies that came out where it's like a revolt against
rebellious teens.
Yeah, against your parents who still went to church, and maybe the kids didn't want to go. That sort of thing. And you were rebelling against your parents, you were rebelling against religion or against your teachers. We're not going to take it, right? Some of those songs. And nowadays, it's just so different. You have it's a different policing that's going on, and it's done by young people, and it's one side of young people, you know, and it's more of a political / I don't know. It's a movement that seems very, very puzzling for me. And I just think the pendulum swings back and forth. In my generation growing up, it was this way, and now it's swung this way. I think that some of this, especially where everyone has their own truth, I think a younger generation is going to come that's honestly going to be a little bit more traditional. And they're going to be like, no, there really is some right and wrong, and probably a little bit more clarity than what the older generation has been saying, because it's what has it brought us? A lot of unhealth, a lot of confusion. And so I'm just curious to see what the next 10 to 15 years are going to be like. Do you think that the pendulum has swung to an extreme that, like being of a younger generation, do you see maybe a little bit of a quote, conservative, maybe a different kind of conservative, but a pendulum swinging back towards the middle?
Between what?
Between like having values that's been instituted by faith, by institution, to no values. It's your truth is your truth, my truth is my truth.
I don't think the pendulum's swinging towards the middle at all.
Really?
I think if anything, it's moving the opposite.
Further out?
Yeah. Because I say that, and I think it really goes back to this idea that Allie was harking on about, you know, these are just teenagers. And so these are like development years, I mean, physically and emotionally, and you know, you're trying to figure out who you are. And now you have all this information, like James was saying, like you have more information and more people speaking into what you should believe than ever before. And now you have no idea what truth is.
Right. And you can find people who agree with you.
Oh yeah. You can go to Google and find anything you want to find.
Yeah.
And
even numbers and statistics, you can find what you want to find. Like,
if you believe in flat Earth, you can find a whole group of people that believe in a flat Earth.
It's easy for me to go to, you know, Pew's website of statistics and find a statistic that matches what I believe.
That's literally what you did.
It's what I did. It's literally what I did. And I did that on purpose to show, like, I specifically looked on articles about mental health, and especially in teenagers. And then I looked at ones that are about social media, and there was way more about social media than anything else. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. But even more so, like, these kids and teenagers, and as we grow into adults, have no idea how to parse all this information.
Yeah.
They have no idea how to apply it, and they have no idea, and we have no idea to really know how to share it in a way that it's meaningful, other than this is what I believe. And now we've gotten to this world and culture of like, what you believe is now truth. And so now you're going to believe what you're thinking is to be true. And that's how you're going to live your life the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Well, so something that concerns me is that, you know, it goes beyond just teenagers. I mean, let's get real. There are adults that still behave just like this.
That's
people
what I was saying.
that are well past the age of 25.
As they grow up.
And they don't, because and I'm not trying to play the blame game. I don't know if this is because parents haven't known how to combat the negativity and all that kind of stuff, or if society, we don't know how to counteract the effects of this. But we've got full-grown adults. I mean, people in politics that are behaving this way, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is the state of our nation, right, or the state of our world. But this whole time as I just think about, and anytime we talk about like the your truth, my truth, and the endorphins from likes and the negative feelings from dislike and not being, all this kind of stuff. There's a television show that I'm a huge fan of. Guess what? It's a sci-fi show from Seth MacFarlane, who is not conservative. Okay, Seth MacFarlane is the guy who created Family Guy. He's created a show called Orville, which is supposed to be like a spoof on Star Trek, but it's actually a really deep show, right? I know it's going to sound funny, but they had this episode where the entire episode was based around a world where people walked around with a like meter and a dislike meter above their heads, right? And based on how you interacted with people, they could go like, dislike, 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 and the idea was this social acceptance is what guides your life. And if you are not prim and proper or popular or cool or funny or whatever, your dislike meter is going to go up and your like meter is going to go down, and then you're done. Because if it gets too low, they'll come and they'll kill you. And it's like, while that's obviously like an extremist thing, this is from a non-conservative dude writing this to talk about this. And let's get real. Writers write about things that are in culture and in society, right? So like this is a mainstream liberal guy talking about how crazy it is that this is the kind of stuff that our society is based on. And so that, again, it's extremist, but I mean, we could be headed there.
Yeah. And man, I just keep going back to what Allie said about, like being a teenager, but now you have to have an opinion on things. And now you have to have an opinion on things that are very deep, complicated,
right?
And politics and economics, and it's so scary to think like when I was that young, I didn't really care about it at all, except for the fact of when my parents were voting and it was an election year.
Same.
You got to stay up late.
Yeah, and
same. I mean, it's no different. I mean, I don't know how it was for you. It was no different for me. Like, I didn't know anything about politics. I didn't care.
I didn't care.
Nobody cared.
No.
That was the thing, is like there wasn't anyone talking about politics or any of these things. I think.
But, young people are in the middle of politics.
They are.
We're talking about what's happening in political, and it's like impacting them. Like they're going to school and they're being told if you're a girl and you're athletic and you enjoy things that boys do, then maybe you have more boy in you and you're kind of in somewhere along the pendulum of being a boy or a girl. Maybe you're supposed to be a boy.
Yeah.
And you have girls having surgeries or wanting to have surgeries at 16 years old. So it's like they're living in like the battleground of what's being talked about.
Yeah, they're kind of like the guinea pigs of this political movement, which is really sad.
It's terribly
I was with a group of parents the other day and talking about just the concern that we have for our children. And it was interesting that many of them talked about when they remember when their kids got their phone. That was like one thing that they remembered. And then also for some of them that had older kids going off to college. And those two things, they felt like, and it was just more access. It was out from under the umbrella of their protection and their care. And it's a scary thought for parents.
Yeah.
You realize at a certain time that, your influence is waning, but I think it's heightened now. I mean, your kids can literally watch and see anything. And there are people that are targeting kids to try to influence them. And I don't know, is that an exaggeration, do you think? Or
I think it can be exaggerated, but I think when you boil it down to the minute things of our culture and social media and selling and things like that, and ads and how we approach entertainment. Yeah, I think it really is targeting for sure.
It is.
I mean, like that's the whole point of advertisement, is to target an audience.
Yeah.
And this is just a very real application. Yesterday, we're preparing for kids camp in the summer, and we always make fun shirts for them. So I was trying to get some inspiration. And I was just looking up like fun kids shirts. I saw probably half of the things I encountered were shirts that said "Be the change" or like "I'm the change," made for toddlers. And so that's a very like movement, focused shirt at 4 years old. What is
So
that
much
child?
pressure.
Yeah. What is that child learning? They don't even know how to read.
That's a parent
They
pressure.
don't even know.
on
That's the thing. And so we have to take responsibility for it.
Yeah.
And I do really feel for teenagers in this time. Like, I remember what it was like. It really wasn't that bad, but it wasn't today also. And so we have to take responsibility for it. And a lot of the things that they go through, we have this list of cyberbullying tactics that people use, and it's name calling, which has always been around. But now it's name calling in public in front of thousands of people. And it's this thing called revenge porn. And that's because our generations and generations past didn't take care of getting porn out of the way. And so these poor kids are now their faces are being photoshopped on other people's bodies, and it's out there for all their peers to look at. And so I just think it's so sad. And the mental health crisis, there are people who don't take it seriously, right? You're going to have people who think it's popular to have a mental health issue, and it's not. By any means. There are actual people who have it and struggle with things. And so you want to take everything seriously because you never know. But I do think a lot of that, we should feel the guilt for a lot of what teenagers are going through today. And some of it is brought upon by themselves, but they don't know any better.
So as the church, how do we respond?
Right.
Like how do we, obviously if we had the answer, it would be solved by now.
Yeah.
But how do we approach this as a Christian and as a church?
Yeah.
How do we help this situation?
I was thinking the same thing. It goes to our last question. And I was just thinking, one, can it really be solved? I think that's why everyone is so hopeful that as the Asbury revival, or I hate to call it a revival and put a stamp on something where you just see something beautiful happening. Let's see where it goes. But it's just like, gosh, we just need a movement of God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, can we solve this? I definitely think there are things that churches and I would even say for other conservative faiths. You have, I grew up with a lot of Jews, and you have the synagogues, and you have different faith organizations. Is like, for our country to be impacted by this, most faiths, especially the Christian faith, the Jewish faith, come from the same book, the Old Testament, and it's like we need people to reinstitute these values and emphasize them to our kids. But I don't know. It's hard. I mean, that's what we do. I mean, we teach the Bible, and I think our church does a great job. I mean, I've been in a lot of churches. I'm like, man, we do a solid job, but yet our kids are still impacted.
Yeah.
We can't protect them from society.
Right.
You even heard of kids, parents saying, my kids were homeschooled, and these are the things that we did. And society, so how do you protect your kids and how do you prepare them?
Yeah, that's almost the impossible question, because
I don't think we have an answer.
There really
like
isn't
an
a good
impossible
answer.
meat.
Yeah, impossible meat. But as someone who's not a parent, obviously, but thinking about this through, when I was growing up and then through college, what decisions did I make and what things did I do to help me kind of influence how I grew up?
Navigate.
And one of the things that I thought about instantly was to teach someone how to think critically.
Yeah. Yeah.
How to think and parse news and what they're absorbing through media and entertainment. How do you think critically, and how do you teach somebody to think critically? Not to the point where nothing is true, but just think, okay, if this is true, or if it's not true, how do I respond?
Right.
And not to accept everything at its face value.
Yeah.
I think that's really good.
Yeah.
And I think as a church too, we just don't need to give up, even though we're seeing in some ways where we feel like we're losing a battle. At the same time, if you do look at statistics with church in general, whether it's evangelicals or if it's non-denominational, you see that in some ways we're holding the line where some of the other churches that have fallen away from some of the same beliefs that maybe those denominations held 10, 20 years ago. Those are the ones that are really suffering. I was watching a blog on that, or listening to a podcast on that. And it was just amazing hearing the the amount of decline in a lot of these Protestant denominations that have begun to compromise. I just think we just have to continue to be faithful to teaching our young people and having conversations. That's where the church maybe could grow a little bit more, is sometimes we're not willing to have those conversations with our young adults. I think maybe youth ministers are and everything, but
well, I think the hard part in our conservative Bible Belt area, I mean, we're in Arkansas, it's easily to make a stigma out of mental health, because it's growing up, and especially when that movement grew, like Southern Baptists grew, was during the boomer age, and like that mentality of like, you got to make sure you're perfect, and make sure other people see that you're successful, you're making it, your family's good, your kids are healthy, things like that. Not necessarily having tough conversations with your family and other people and being honest.
And one thing too, again, not a parent, but as an aunt, I've had some of these conversations, and they've been eye-opening for me too. A lot of what teenagers are going through started when they were younger. And so a lot of the evil influence started when they were younger. And so I think as parents, it's really important to invest in your children, to teach them how to love other people. We were always taught, keep an eye out for whoever's getting bullied, because it was happening verbally and physically. And it's like, tell your teacher. It's like, okay, well, now, like with this generation, how can you personally get involved in helping someone? And I think that's a huge change I see. And my niece and I have had good conversations. There's children in her class who are going through sexual identity crisis, and that was happening in 4th grade, and some of her friends. And so the question was, how do I respond? I don't want to feel uncomfortable being their friend, and I want to be able to go to a sleepover with them and all these things. And it just makes you question so many different things at a younger age. But I told her, I don't even know if this is good advice, so I'll just say it here, and you can affirm or tell me not.
No, it was wrong.
It was terrible. But I just told her, this is a really important time that you love your friend, regardless of what she's trying to figure out in her life, because you don't know what her home life is like. She might not have anyone who affirms her at home as you are of value and you are of worth. And so, her name is Ellie, my niece's. And so I just told her, Ellie, you've got to be who you are and the friend that you have been to this girl throughout the rest of her school years, because she'll remember that. And I mean, there are people in my life I remember who were influential friends of mine, and I tried to be that person for others. And so I just think, as a parent, if I had a teenager right now, the dinner table conversations would be how to think critically and how to love others without compromising what you believe in.
No, that's really good.
Every generation probably thinks that it's near the end of the world when they look at the values and everything. You see in the Old Testament, where the prayers are, Lord, heal our land. And I think that we're looking at the same issue, but it does seem insurmountable. And I think we need to pray. We need to ask for God to do what we can't do, and then we just need to do our part. And as parents, we need to do our part for our kids. As churches and as leaders, we need to do our part and make sure that we're actually engaged in what's really happening in the lives of young people and talking about those things, and not make those taboo conversations and everything. So, but good conversation. And
we barely scratched the surface.
Oh yeah. I feel like that with a lot of these things there's just so much more to say, but it is important that we're aware of it. And so, when you see a young person, encourage them, brighten their day, and come alongside and encourage them, be a friend. So, all right, you guys. Well, as always, we want you to share your thoughts, and we would love to hear your thoughts. We may not be able to comment on everything that's going on, but everyone needs to be able to share their opinion. We'd love to hear yours as well. And join us next week. We're going to be talking about, I think, a neat topic, a movie that's coming out. If you haven't heard about it yet, it is called Jesus
Revolution.
There you go. Yeah.
Revolution. That's
Jesus
right.
Revolution. Yep. Came out yesterday.
Jesus
and
Christ.
I think it's a good segue from what we talked about last week on the Asbury revival, and just going back to the 70s and what happened there.
I love the 70s.
Yeah.
The 70s.
Yeah. I've downloaded a book on the 70s and the revival back then. It's like, oh, pretty interesting. Thank y'all for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.